Hey all, I'm Leslie Hooper and welcome to my channel.
And I'm Steph Meadamontes.
And today we're going to be reacting to a video titled Body Shaming Men is Normal, but Nobody Cares. And I just wanted to touch on this topic because last week we spoke about a woman who posted on her YouTube channel what it was like to experience Tinder as a fat person. And I thought this might be an interesting angle to follow up with her perspective and get the dude's perspective on how they feel on the other end. So, Steph, are you ready?
I am so ready for this one.
Okay. I love your enthusiasm.
I want to show you something that I found on over 100 girls' dating apps. Now, this proves a few things. The first, that I'm a whore. But secondly, that when a girl says that she prefers a guy who's 6 feet tall, it's considered a dating preference, not necessarily body shaming. But why? Most of us could agree that if a guy were to ride must weigh less than 150 pounds to ride this ride, then he would be labeled as fatphobic or a body-shaming, misogynistic piece of shit. Which is stupid because we can control our weight through diet and exercise, but not really our height. Unless you wear these bad boys. By the way, height is the second most lied about feature on dating apps. The first is job, just in case you were wondering. So let's talk about why this is okay, but not this.
Would you ever date a shorter guy?
No. No! Absolutely no. 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 Absolutely not.
Wait, why no? Why?
It's just weird.
Let's start from the ground up. Do women even prefer taller guys? There's a few studies we'll go over. The first one being this 2013 study that surveyed over 650 college students about their height preferences in partners. Unsurprisingly, the average woman preferred that her man be at least 8 inches taller than her. The average guy said they preferred a woman only 3 inches shorter than him. Here's another study that sampled 2,000 personal ads, which are basically ads looking for love. Both sexes preferred relationships where the woman was shorter. Now, this I found interesting. 13.5% of men wanted to date women that were shorter than they are, compared to almost 50% of women preferred tall men only. Emphasis on only, meaning you must be over 6 feet to ride this ride. And finally, the shortest man a woman would date is 5 feet 9 inches tall, versus the shortest woman a man would date is 5 feet 1 inch tall. In that same study, researchers found that 23% of men would accept a relationship where the woman was taller, but only 4% of women would accept such a relationship. Just to repeat that slowly, there's 96% of women in this study that would not accept a relationship with a shorter man. Bro, 96% is basically 100%. According to the study in 1980, records of couples' bank accounts revealed that only 1 out of 720 couples had a taller female spouse. I don't think it proves anything except for the fact that there were 719 women that refused to marry a shorter man. Now, let's be real for a second. We're all just a bunch of monkeys on a rock in space trying to survive. It's not like we're that evolved. We pretend to be very forward-thinking and progressive, but everyone has a fight or flight response. It's written in our genetic code to protect our bloodline, essentially. Which is funny enough why women prefer taller men. Reason number 1. Big man protects small woman. One theory is that for evolutionary purposes, women unconsciously prefer taller men because these men tend to be more successful in physical altercations with other men. Which basically means that, of course, a taller, bigger guy is going to kick the smaller guy's ass. There's just no way around it. It's a physical advantage. So this is naturally why women gravitate towards taller men. Reason number 2, tall men provide more resources. Now, women also associate height and athleticism with masculinity, which makes them the better choice reproductively. As evolutionary biologist Dr. Eric Postma says, the cliche that women love tall, athletic men is real because he can provide more than a shorter man. And this still stands true today. It's actually proven that taller men have a better chance of being elected president, for example. Studies show that tall men are seen as leaders and are elected to office more often than shorter men who run against them. Taller men are also more than likely to win the popular vote during a presidential election and to be reelected once they're in office. For example, if we take a look at US presidential history, we can see that the average height of elected presidents is 5 feet 11 inches. And right out of the gate, the first US president, George Washington, was 6 feet 2 inches tall, which by the way is insane because the average height of American males today is 5 feet 9 inches, and even shorter back in the 1700s. As if that wasn't enough, I found out that 58% of Fortune 500 company CEOs are over 6 feet. Tall men are more likely to be educated, they marry more often, and taller men tend to make more money than their shorter coworkers. One study even suggested that taller men have better leadership potential overall because they tend to have higher self-esteem. They're happier and unlikely to feel jealousy towards other men. Reason number 3, better offspring. There was a study that said women possess mating mechanisms that favor tall men because tall stature provided either heritable advantages to offspring or direct benefits such as resources to women in the ancestral past. What that basically means is that taller guys have a better chance to survive the winter when they can hunt and do cooler shit than shorter guys, which are more than likely to die off quicker. Yeah. Now, of course, there's exceptions to every rule. And I found it hilarious that in this delusional article that I found, written by a woman, by the way, it stated that shorter men still have a chance. You just have to be Zac Efron. Let me explain. The article reads, furthermore, women tend to be attracted to men who are confident and classically handsome. For example, Zac Efron is 5 foot 8 inches, and he doesn't let that stop him from being one of the hottest guys ever. Oh, you mean the uber successful, famous rich guy who hit the genetic lottery when it comes to literally everything else besides height? Dude, that guy is like a Greek god.
Oh, but you just have to be Zac Efron, guys, and you'll be fine.
As we can see by women's dating choices, they prefer stronger, taller men. It must be okay if it's the way we're made, right? Okay, I'm glad you agree because men also prefer skinnier, healthier looking women. So this goes back to the point I made earlier about women wanting to protect their future offspring by giving them their best genes, just an overall bigger chance to survive. Same thing with men. We prefer youth, fertility, and a lower risk of disease, which is usually correlated with skinnier and more fit women. That's a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because you can't really say that out loud. Otherwise, you're going to get labeled as a fat shamer or a body shamer or insert whatever expletive. Now, this brings us to our final chapter of the video. I think we can all agree that as a society, we are somewhat progressive and forward-thinking. At least there's been a great effort to do so. There's an attempt at the very least. However, I think that kind of thinking for some reason doesn't really apply to men a lot of the times, just because we're considered a privileged group, which means you immediately get a VIP access card to life. But I want to show you something and I'll explain why. If I search on Google, my husband yells at me, it shows the domestic abuse helpline, which is great. However, if I search my wife yells at me, there is no helpline. Instead, what you'll find are articles upon articles, things like 6 ways to get her to stop yelling, which makes me sick to my stomach. Because basically what this is implying is that men are at fault because their wife is emotionally abusing them. It's the same thing with body shaming. If you type in body shaming and go to news or even Google Images, you're going to struggle to find any content targeted towards helping men. And let's be honest for a second here. When men are going through a hard time, nobody really gives a fuck. It's like this unspoken, invisible rule that society really only cares about women and children. You even see it in movies. Get the kids and fucking woman off the boat. You guys can drown. It's because, like I said, a label has been placed upon men that, hey, you have too many rights. You've been in power for way too long. There's no way you can struggle. And if you struggle, you can't really complain because you have all this shit going for you, which is stupid. It's like somebody cutting your arm off and saying, hey, dude, you should be grateful you have 2 legs and 1 arm left. It's, yeah, but I lost an arm here. I also want you to be honest for a second. If you hear the term, I don't like short men versus I don't like fat women, which statement do you think is going to get the most hate? The fat one, obviously. And that's not even close. Even the way it sounds, I don't like fat woman, just sounds meaner. But why? It's the same shit. However, today in the media, bigger women are being idolized and given a platform, while short men are always the butt end of the joke. It's obvious that here as a society, we do not equate short shaming, basically saying, hey, I prefer shorter men, as body shaming. You can literally say this
Would you ever date a shorter guy?
No.
and nothing will happen to you. It's gonna get brushed off as, oh, that's just her preference. Bruh. So I'm here for justice, okay? Because basically, dude, you're either all okay for body shaming or you're against all body shaming. You don't get to cherry pick. So new rule, if you demand a 6-foot chatted out guy, you better look like a Victoria's Secret model.
He's a character.
I'm exhausted. I would like a nap at this point. There are a lot of things that he said that aren't wrong. And one thing that I will say, though, is that even though it seems like larger women in the media are getting more attention and praise and things, first of all, it's more about their humanity than their fuckability. There have always been men who preferred bigger women and men that preferred smaller women, and none of that is actually changing. The body positive narrative doesn't change whether or not a man gets excited about a woman's body regardless of size. And so that's really more about just, hey, you're allowed to exist in a marginalized body, whereas a short body I wouldn't say is marginalized. However, I still think it's fucked up. And my point in saying all of this is that most people who really do stand up for fat acceptance and equality and things like that do comment, hey, we don't need to be body shaming guys either. Hey, men go through this kind of shit too. We need to recognize and care about our men and raise up our men with better self-esteem and better self-worth. And this narrative is bullshit. So I actually think that him shitting on all of that is him shitting on the wrong people. Like, when we're comparing apples to apples here, yeah, the vain girls that only want 6 feet plus men are in the same category as the asshole guys that are like, oh my God, if she's not thin, she's not fertile, as if that's a fucking thing, by the way. I'll tell you what, when I wasn't fertile, when I was at my thinnest, I wasn't even having a goddamn period, but she looked fit and healthy, didn't she? Yeah, that's a no.
I also think that's on the extreme side of fit. I would even argue that most men are not attracted to that fit or thin version of a female body because it starts to look too masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you consider the examples he set forth in his video of Miss Yoga Stretching USA, like, if that's the standard, just so we're aware, you're not attracted to her because she's fertile. She very well may not be fertile at all.
Well,
or
I mean,
even
look, I'm just going to play devil's advocate because also a tall dude, what is the odds that he's actually going to have to go and wrestle a fucking bear for you?
Right.
He's
None.
not like it's the same argument, which is his whole
Exactly.
point. It's like both are problematic in their own ways, for sure. And I agree with him that calling somebody fat is much different than calling somebody short. And that is a cultural issue.
I also consider a few different things. One being that I've had a handful of clients, female clients, that are over 6 feet tall. Sure. And I wonder what their experience is like with men who are also 5'9" or 5'8".
Well, if we tap into his statistic, only one woman was willing to marry out of 720, a guy basically shorter than her. And right. Frankly, I see that true in my own family dynamic. My nephew's 6'4", his wife is 6'2". That was really important to her. We talked about it. And I think taller girls or smaller girls do tend to gravitate more towards a dude who's at least somewhat larger. Obviously not across the board, but that does seem to track.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if that is because society has told women that they should never be larger than their husbands.
Sure.
Society has told women you shouldn't be heavier than your husband, you shouldn't be bigger than your husband, you shouldn't be like all the things. And so all of this is just a social narrative. And
do you believe that there's nothing biological about it, like deeply wired in the DNA?
I can see how somebody would make that argument, except for when you dial back the old time machine and people were choosing mates, they weren't choosing for height. Back then, they were choosing for resources. So I think that there's
Yes,
choice.
but who was most likely to protect and defend at the tribe, so to speak?
If you were born out of the queen's vagina and you only got to 5'5", it doesn't matter. You had a row full of
Okay,
seeds.
but there's one prince coming out of, or maybe two coming out of the
Yeah,
queen's
I don't know.
out of,
All
like,
I know is that I feel like this is based on resources. Whatever resources people value most are what
I agree with
becomes most attractive. And that includes fat men, tall men, fat women, short women, tall, whatever, like wherever the resources are biologically, we are attracted to both traits, features, whatever, but it's really what we value most. How are we going to be taken care of? There's also a huge narrative that women are unsafe in general. We are just generally unsafe. We are murderable, we are muggable, we are rapeable, we are all the things, and we are the weaker sex, and shit's going to happen to us. I've got mace in every one of my running belts. I just really think that we have been conditioned to believe we are the victims. Men have been conditioned to believe that they are the conquerors and entitled and all the things, and there is nuance in this conversation. You could look at it so many different ways. What I do think is an important message that I don't want to miss, though, is the mental health and well-being of men being shit on, shoved away, saying this doesn't matter, suck up your feelings, nobody cares about you, because they do struggle. I'm a mother of 4 sons. Mental health absolutely matters for men. And if anybody wants men to be stronger, better, whatever, then give a shit about their mental health and well-being. Because when that breaks, then we have all the toxic narrative of you should have been stronger, you should have been better, you should have been less disappointing, whatever. And that's the loudest voice in the room. So I really appreciated that piece of his conversation that he pulled in. The rest of it, I'm just like, I don't fucking know, man. People suck all the way around.
I'm with you. I appreciate that he brought to the table that small dudes, short dudes, whatever, do get shit on. And that's true. It's an old trope. We see it in all the movies, all the TV shows. And that's shitty, in the same way that it's shitty for the overweight woman to be like the fat, funny friend, and she never gets the guy kind of thing. So it's just as equally problematic.
If people were just more straight across the board, would there be more authentic connection happening? Because we don't have this. If that wasn't even an option to say, I prefer to date people of a certain height, would you connect in a different way because you weren't so worried about catfishing someone and then wearing height shoes or 3 layers of Spanx to try and get through your date?
I was a little shocked to learn that George Washington was 6'2". That was giant back then. So that's pretty crazy. But which is also, I think that there probably really is some biological component, whether we like it or not.
I could see how taking up space creates an illusion of power. Or maybe even not an illusion. It creates an actual power dynamic. Yeah.
You're more noticeable, like an NFL football player walk into your restaurant, your bar, as I did, and it was immediately everybody was like, who's that? Who's he played for? Whatever. There is an energy to it that gets people's attention. So anyway, fascinating topic. Thank you for the interesting discussions.
Yeah, I literally know nothing about this other than the body image element. And on that point, I agree with all of it. The rest of it, I don't know. I'd have to do some reading on it, and I'm not sure I want to.
You've been married for 25 years, so you haven't really had to look into what creates attraction. And in my case, I've been single for 35 years. So I have done quite a bit of reading on attraction and what creates attraction. Anything else that you want to talk about?
I think that's it for me as well.
I'm really curious for our viewers' thoughts on this topic. What's your experience, preference? What do you think? How much of this is biological or nature versus nurture? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit the subscribe button on the way out. We will catch you on the next one, y'all.